Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel is simply called Discerning What is True. Tonight is Friday evening. It's the 16th day of January 2026. I'm going to be reading another particular chapter. This will be chapter 16. This is from Kabbalah and Exodus. The writer is named Zev Ben Shimon Halevi. And this is the chapter simply entitled Beginning of Discipline. On the level of individual development, the position of the Israelites to so far reflects the following situation. The person has awakened to a way out of the bondage that confines the soul and spirit to the body. So this is kind of it's a recognition that somehow something's different in your life, meaning that somehow you see some things that don't add up anymore. There's something out there that you're like, I don't believe in a literal interpretation of the Bible. I don't believe it's a historical book. Um, I don't. I'm not participating in the church anymore. I'm looking for something different. In other words, there's this. You're come to the state of something's not right here. There's a. You're no longer complacent in a way. You realize that um, you know, where why they talk about certain things like the certain thing, the Noah's Ark. Well, if it was true, why haven't they found it? You know, um, like I said in an earlier version I did a couple of chapters ago, I was at a place having my car repaired, and they were showing the History Channel, and so I'm just sitting there because I'm basically I've got to wait for them to repair my car. And I'm watching this program on the History Channel, and I'm just befuddled that I used to believe this stuff. I actually believe this. You know, didn't ask why, simply believed it because as a young person, as a child growing up in the church, that's you're taught these things, and you don't really question them. And if you do start questioning things, which I did, I started questioning things. But they were not based upon, seeing the complete picture. I was questioning simply is that in the church I was going to, which was a Presbyterian church, okay, well, this is what the Reformed faith's all about. This is what Presbyterian's about. This is what John Calvin's all about, such and such. And I was actually following a particular guy. He wrote a magazine called a journal each month, so to speak, called Modern Reformation. In other words, he felt this is why, let me get you to the point here. It's almost as though the church has become stale. Okay. In fact, it has become stale. And this guy was involved in this and says, we need to have another reformation. Okay. We need to have, the church is dead or almost dead. And we need to have a modern reformation that, one that basically took place, back in the 1600s or late 1500s. And let's have a modern reformation. It's over 400 years now, roughly, or near 400 years. And we need to instill this and get people, on board of this and do something. You see, that's where I was at, not understanding. This is, I'm, I'm mid 30s at this point. And so then I make a step and I decided to go to seminary. And but I'm not interested in. I'm interested so much in theology but I also interested in church history because I knew that history itself would show somehow where this theology developed. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking in mind, and I won't go any more in that. That's how I've adopted these things. You see, um, so so the person has awakened. Okay, well, right. These early stages have been made with help from above in the form of a guide who may be seen as an inner or outer teacher. The instructor, I should say, aided by divine providence, has taken the individual to a crucial point of no return where conscious work has to begin or progress will stop, leaving the disciple stranded in the wilderness between the bondage of earth and the freedom of heaven. The wilderness is the lower face of the psychological tree or world of formation. The psyche, like the Israelites, is composed of a confederation of individual units, families of complexes, and tribes of unconscious levels held together by a bond of lower affinities. In the undisciplined, there is no developed psychological organization. Now he uses the psychological part here, but in reality is spiritual, you see. This is like a jumping stone for this guy, so to speak. But I'm looking at it in a more spiritual, because we are a spiritual being, you see. Only a amorphous mass of elements which, like the Israelites, can be easily swayed and thrown into fear and confusion by strong internal or external factors. Well, that's true of all of us, isn't it? We something, like I said, our lives are like, we're like a train on the rails, and suddenly suddenly the train itself is us, and we jump the rails, and we don't know what happened. It's kind of not a booby trap, but it just suddenly you realize, what happened here? You know, what's going on in my life? I don't have control of my life anymore, so to speak. You see, and that fear does it with me. It happened that way at around 40 years old, and it was a very fearful thing. And I won't go into all about it, but basically something got my attention, and it took time, and that's part of it. And I began to see things that were in the seminary that, to me, did not add up. Now, I didn't have the answers, believe me, um, but I knew something was wrong. So, okay, so we're at to begin bringing about some order within the immature psyche. All esoteric teachings give our apparently petty but strict instructions designed to start the process of real discipline. Naturally, these injunctions must be put to the test. That is, remember the forbidden apple. Otherwise, the lessons inherited in them will not be learned, and greater privileges and duties cannot be given. The function of discipline is to train the will not only to control their various factions in their psyche, but to contain their concerted power and direct it under obedience to spiritual law, so that it may be of use to the Creator. Thus, the divine has an interest in the process and will intervene if the teacher's experience is inadequate. Now, I can see this is not exactly everything that what Phil Langdon would share. Okay, so I know this guy understood certain things, but he did not have any type of ascension in his life. But he is explaining certain things that he's been taught here, but it's getting to a stepping stage, but it's not as far as what Phil Langdon has gone through. And why I say this, because I've had many conversations with Phil Langdon on these subjects, and I see simply it's not just psychological, it's spiritual. You see, and he ties it in here such and such. I'm not saying it's a bad book. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying simply this is kind of the wet your tongue, so to speak. Okay. Now the Israelites complained they would starve in the wilderness. And so the Lord said to Moses that manna, I should say, would rain down from heaven. That is, that food would fall from the creative world of the Spirit. So what is that all about? Okay, that can't be a physical manifestation, but that's how we're taught. So this is something else. This is spiritual food. This is what's going on. It has nothing to do with the physical world. in what I'm seeing here. Such substance is vital to the flagging soul at this stage. However, with this act of grace came the instruction that the people were only to gather a day's supply, and on the sixth day, 2-day measure, that is. This was the test to see whether the people could follow their instruction. In other words, hey, let me get extra, let me get an extra, another extra piece of pie. I mean, a piece of pie here, so to speak. Nope, that's not. No, you have to come back the next day, so to speak. It doesn't work that way, you see. But it's right here, you see. No, that's not the way it works. So this was the test to see whether the people could follow instructions. In other words, would they be obedient? While they were slave-minded from habit, they did possess a free will. That must be exercised in a totally new situation. Moses, as the intermediate between God and the Israelites, told the people that divine grace would provide their substance, or they had already forgotten that it was the Lord they were dealing with and not Moses. You see, Moses is the in-between guy here, so to speak, in this story. All right. This is a mistake often made by students who see their spiritual teachers as the all providing perennial figures or divine projections. You see, according to tradition, manna, I should say, I keep saying manna, I'm sorry, manna is created in the third heaven. This is a place to which a man, during ritual, prayer, or contemplation, can rise and receive instructions in the mysteries of creation. Now, I wonder if he's talking about what Phil talks about is what we call, I don't know, so I'm just speculating here. There's two keys. There's an illustration of the what I was taught from Phil was there's two keys you have, and this comes from the Catholic, not their teachings, but they have a what's the word I want to say? They have a symbol of that. That's what they have. So there's two steps to it. Okay, that's what Phil shared with me many years ago. It was to do with two steps, and one is not enough. It has to be two. So that you have the meeting with, as he had it at Angkor Wat in Cambodia. But it doesn't have to take place at some place. Okay, that's just where it happened for him. Okay, so it's not you don't get on the airplane and say, oh, I'm going to go over here such and such, expect that. No, that's not how it works. It works when the person is ready for that too. If they're not ready, nothing's going to happen. You see. And that took place. He met God within himself. And a little while later, such and such, I can't remember the time period, but it's not that long. Then he speculated, why me? And before that, actually, he goes to another particular anchor, Tom, Thom, I think is the way it's spelled. And what happens is what occurs there, there's a message sent to him before him. Nowhere else. All this is to him personally. This takes place. And I think remember him saying simply is he was asking why me, and the questions was because you're honest. I think that's critical because he knew his weaknesses within himself, and he would fail. Didn't make excuses for it either. Most of us make excuses, not all of us make excuses. Okay, and that's this is why certain people have had what I would call some type of event in their lives. They claim they meet God, but they don't go to the second step. Okay, they don't get there. They don't realize it's a second step. They just see that one step, but their lives don't really. It doesn't change their lives. There is an event that takes place, but it's not grounded. It's not taking. It's not It's like a seed board, so to speak. It goes in the ground, and it's not good ground. You see, and they think that's it, but their lives don't change. It doesn't change at all. You see. So this is the place to which a man during ritual prayer or contemplation, which Bill would say simply is to do with stillness, can rise and receive instructions in the mysteries of creation. On this spiritual level called the heaven of sincerity. Kabbalah tells us a pure light sends to illuminate the 12 tribes. It's interesting, the 12 tribes, the 12 astrological signs, you see. Legend states that the promised manna descended at night, that is, into the unconscious state. Interesting. So that when the people awoke in the morning, they perceived its presence in the conscious mind. We are told that the manna took on whatever form of food was most pleasing to the individual. I don't know if I'm going to speculate. This is going to continue to read. To the child, it became milk. To the youth, bread. To the old, honey. And to the sick, like barley soaked in oil and honey. When the manna came, the flocks of quails. If manna represents the right hand pillar of mercy, the quails were the left of severity. So there's the two sides, such and such. There's the two pillars. As was later to be found when the people gathered them to assess. And many died of a plague as a result of their greed. This is based upon Numbers chapter 11, verses 33 and 34. However, this degree of severity was not applied at this early age of discipline. Okay, so there is grace there at that point. When some Israelites gathered too much manna or kept it overnight, which they had been forbidden to do, this manna became full of maggots and stank. So it didn't work out. Okay, so it's another warning against taking spiritual things for oneself and the dangers of excess, even in the holy matters. It is not unknown for the overzealous to develop a psychological imbalance when they take too much spirit. Enough for one day is sufficient. It's on God's timetable, you see. The instruction regarding the manna of the seventh day is interesting. It tells the student this, or I should say, tells the student that while he must work at gathering manna to earn merit during the week, the day of rest reminds him to trust the divine, to realize he is provided primarily by grace. Thus, the Israelites were told to devote their time on the Sabbath to study and prayer. Some people, of course, disobeyed, and they found nothing in every sense that is on that day. Moses himself, under instruction, then told the Israelites to keep a measure of manna for future generations to show how the Lord fed them in the wilderness after they had been brought out of Egypt. This was done and stored in a container. It's got it in quotes here, spelled L-I-F, Lifnei, L-I-F-N-A-Y, Yahweh, end quote. Another quote here, before the Lord, end quote. So that's what it means. This testimony we taste today as we look into the Bible, which is a receptacle of the teachings before the face of God. Interesting, he uses the word face of God here. The daily ration of manna was to be supplied to the people all the days they were in the wilderness until they came to the borders of the land flowing with milk and honey. And there's now I don't know if this is true or not. I mean, I've heard people say this. There's a certain particular thing in your head. This is all to do with your head, so to speak, flowing with milk and honey. Now, I remember this teaching from somewhere. It's a while back. I may have to ask Phil what it means, but milk and honey. Let me see. I don't know if that word. I doubt it. I don't think it's going to be in this book, but I'll because I don't know. Let's see what it says. Let's check it out first. Let's look up the word honey. See if it's here. Um, Curiosity. Um, no, it's not. No, it's not. So that's it's not what I call a metaphysical word, which I didn't think it would be. Um, here it ceased because the fully trained and mature Israelites would then be able to partake directly of the food of heaven. However, such a state of being was 40 years of experience away. Interesting, 40 years. That's half a life, you see. You go through all kinds of things in your life, so to speak, and then there's somehow something happens in your life, and some people don't recognize it. I didn't recognize it at first. What took place with me at that age of 40 years old, which is the middle, is what many would say in our own way of a midlife crisis. You see, um, we don't think outside the box in some ways neither in that regard. So that's the end of chapter 16 tonight, and we're gonna stop at this point. Um, appreciate you being here. Let me find where it is here, where I'm supposed to get out of this place. Um, okay, so I'll stop at this point here. Appreciate you being here again. Again, today is the 16th day of January 2026. Wish you a good evening and thank you for your attention, and you take care. Have a good night.